In the stillness of the night, when the noise of the world begins to fade, the mind often refuses to rest. Thoughts continue to swirl, replaying the past, imagining the future, and weaving endless stories that hold us captive even when the body longs for sleep. Many people close their eyes, but inside, their minds remain wide awake, locked in an inner dialogue that never pauses. This constant chatter is what prevents the depth of rest the body and spirit require. To silence the mind before sleep is not just about preparing for rest. It is about learning the art of releasing what does not serve us and allowing the inner self to descend into peace. Sleep is not simply a physical act. It is a spiritual retreat, a process of renewal where the body repairs, the mind organizes, and the spirit realigns. When the mind carries chaos into the night, the body may sleep lightly, but the rest is incomplete. Restless sleep reflects a restless mind, and restless minds are a reflection of unresolved burdens carried throughout the day. This is why the practice of silencing the mind before sleep is one of the greatest gifts you can offer yourself. It is not forced silence, but rather the kind of stillness that comes when you have released the grip of constant thinking, constant worrying, constant striving. To silence the mind before sleep, one must first understand why the mind resists quiet. The mind resists silence because it is addicted to movement. It thrives on repetition, on rehearsing scenarios, on holding tightly to unresolved situations. At night, when the external world grows quiet, the inner world often grows louder. The mind seizes this opportunity to replay conversations, to analyze failures, to anticipate tomorrow's struggles. But the more you give energy to these thoughts, the more they multiply. Silence cannot be achieved through fighting the thoughts or suppressing them. True silence comes from recognition and release, from acknowledging the presence of thought without attachment, and then gently letting it drift away like clouds across the sky. Breathing becomes a powerful tool in this process. The breath anchors you in the present moment. Slow, deep breaths signal to the body and the mind that it is safe to relax. When you focus on the breath, the constant chatter begins to lose its grip, for the mind cannot cling to endless thoughts while fully resting in the rhythm of inhaling and exhaling. Each breath becomes a reminder that nothing needs to be solved tonight, that tomorrow has not yet arrived, and that peace can only be experienced in this very moment. Another way to silence the mind before sleep is through the release of the day. Many carry the weight of unresolved emotions, anger, regret, worry, unfinished conversations. These linger in the subconscious and rise to the surface at night. Before you lie down to rest, take time to consciously release these burdens. It can be done through journaling, where the page becomes a container for your thoughts. It can be done through reflection, where you acknowledge the day, its lessons, its struggles, and then let them go with gratitude. What is left unspoken or unsettled in the waking world should not be allowed to steal your rest. By releasing it, you create a clear space within where silence naturally emerges. The environment you create before sleep also shapes the silence within. If your final moments of the day are spent in stimulation, scrolling through screens, consuming endless noise, your mind is conditioned to remain restless. Silence must be cultivated through intention. Dimming the lights, reducing distractions, allowing the body and senses to slow down, all of these practices prepare the mind for quiet. The external silence guides the inner silence, reminding the mind that it is time to let go. Stillness does not mean emptiness. When the mind is silent, what emerges is clarity, subtle awareness, and inner strength. Silence is not the absence of thought, it is the presence of peace. The more one practices silence before sleep, the more the body remembers how to descend into deep rest. Over time, sleep becomes not only restorative but transformative. Dreams shift from chaotic echoes of a noisy mind into reflections of inner alignment. The subconscious begins to process in harmony rather than in confusion. The practice of silencing the mind before sleep is not just for the night. It teaches the art of letting go. It shows that peace is not found in solving everything at once, but in releasing the need to control every outcome. Each night becomes a reminder that surrender is not weakness, but strength. By silencing the mind, you awaken to the truth that rest is sacred, that the body, mind, and spirit need stillness as much as they need air and nourishment. When silence comes before sleep, the night becomes a teacher. In that quiet descent into stillness, you learn how much energy has been wasted in clinging to thoughts that do not matter, how much strength is regained when the mind learns to rest, and how peace is not found by reaching outward, but by turning inward. The silence before sleep is not just preparation for rest. It is preparation for life itself, a daily training in letting go of noise, in trusting the unseen, and in remembering that the deepest power often speaks through stillness. Gratitude is not simply a polite gesture of saying thank you. It is not limited to acknowledging the pleasant, the beautiful, or the desirable moments in life. Gratitude is a state of being, a way of seeing, a lens through which the entire existence is perceived differently. When gratitude arises deeply, it alters not only the way one relates to others, but also the way one relates to oneself, to circumstances, and to the unfolding journey of life. Many people confuse gratitude with selective appreciation. They practice gratitude when life is smooth, when opportunities are flowing, when the body is healthy, and when circumstances align with desires. Yet this is conditional gratitude. It depends on the external. It arises when the world offers something that pleases the mind, and it vanishes when the world resists expectations. Real gratitude is not dependent on conditions. It is the inner recognition that even difficulty carries value, even loss holds a lesson, even pain can become a teacher. When gratitude is approached in this way, it becomes a gateway to transformation, to inner peace, to resilience. Why is it called a gateway? Because gratitude does not end with itself. Gratitude opens a door. On the other side of this door lies acceptance, serenity, and alignment with life as it is. Gratitude clears the dust from perception, allowing one to see that life is not happening to us, but for us, in a way that pushes us toward growth, understanding, and awareness. Think of the mind when it is ungrateful. The ungrateful mind resists, complains, compares. It asks, why me? Why now? Why this? It contracts, it judges, it rejects. In such a state, energy stagnates. The mind creates walls of frustration, and the body tightens with tension. But when gratitude arises, the walls dissolve. The resistance softens. The mind shifts from rejection to recognition, from bitterness to openness. Energy flows again. Gratitude transforms constriction into expansion. There is also a deeper dimension. Gratitude, when practiced consistently, reshapes the subconscious. The human brain is wired to notice threats more than blessings, to notice lack more than abundance. This is a survival mechanism, yet it becomes a trap in modern life. Gratitude retrains perception. It rewires the attention so that blessings, opportunities, and quiet moments of beauty are no longer invisible. Slowly, gratitude shifts the inner narrative from life is against me to life is supporting me. And this shift opens the gateway to courage, to joy, to trust. In many traditions, gratitude is described as the highest vibration, not because it ignores suffering, but because it elevates the one experiencing suffering into a new dimension of understanding. Imagine carrying a heavy stone on your back. The stone represents problems, struggles, and burdens. The ungrateful mind sees only the weight, curses the stone, and collapses under its heaviness. The grateful mind does not deny the weight, but begins to see the strength that carrying the stone is building, the patience it is training, the awareness it is sharpening. In this way, gratitude turns the stone into a tool, not a punishment. Gratitude is also a mirror. It reflects back to you the state of your relationship with life. If gratitude is absent, it reveals that the ego is still holding on tightly to control, to demands, to expectations. If gratitude flows, it shows that surrender is present, that there is trust in the intelligence of life's unfolding. Gratitude does not mean passivity. It does not mean accepting everything without effort or responsibility. Instead, gratitude means engaging with life while rooted in appreciation, even when outcomes differ from desires. When gratitude deepens, it becomes a meditation, to breathe in and feel thankful for the breath itself, to look at the sky and feel gratitude for the vastness above, to witness the presence of another being and feel gratitude for connection. These are not dramatic events, but gratitude turns them into profound experiences. This meditation does not require a special posture or place. Gratitude can be practiced while walking, eating, working, or resting. It is a continuous awareness, a reminder that everything is a gift, even the simplest aspects of existence. At its highest form, gratitude dissolves separation. When one is truly grateful, there is no longer an I who demands and a world that supplies. There is only a flow of receiving and appreciating, a dance of giving and acknowledging. Gratitude becomes the bridge that unites the inner and the outer, the self and the universe. In that state, fear diminishes because fear thrives on lack and gratitude reveals abundance. Anxiety weakens because anxiety feeds on uncertainty and gratitude grounds itself in the present. Anger loses power because anger clings to injustice, while gratitude recognizes lessons hidden within events. Gratitude is not an occasional practice, it is a discipline. It must be cultivated when the mind wants to complain, when the heart wants to close, when circumstances tempt you to despair. To practice gratitude in easy times is pleasant. To practice gratitude in hard times is transformative. This is why it is called a gateway, because the passage through it takes one from limitation to expansion, from resistance to surrender, from blindness to clarity. Gratitude as the gateway shows us that life is not meant to be controlled but embraced. It is not meant to be perfect but purposeful. It is not meant to constantly please us, but to constantly grow us. And when this realization deepens, gratitude ceases to be a choice. It becomes the natural state of awareness, the recognition that everything, absolutely everything, is part of the unfolding journey. A desire in itself is not the problem. The human being is born with desire. It is the inner fire that moves us forward, the subtle force that pushes us to rise each day, to reach beyond what is already known. Without desire, there would be no growth, no learning, no discovery. But what troubles most people is not the presence of desire, it is the lack of clarity within it. A desire that is not understood, not examined, not brought into focus becomes a heavy mist that surrounds the mind. In this mist, the individual moves but does not know where. Steps are taken, effort is spent, time is used, but the direction is unclear, and therefore the destination remains unreachable. Clarity of desire is the sharpening of that inner flame. It is the act of turning confusion into precision, turning vague wishes into living intentions. It is the moment where the mind stops wandering through endless possibilities and begins to see a single, luminous path. When the mind knows what it wants with clarity, energy gathers, focus sharpens, and the body follows. The struggle that most people feel is not because they lack strength or discipline, but because they do not know exactly what they are striving toward. There are those who say, I want happiness. But what does happiness mean? For one person, it may be health. For another, it may be freedom. For another, it may be success in their craft. If happiness is only a word and not an image, not a form, not a lived experience, then the desire for happiness is empty. To say, I want peace, means nothing unless one has defined what peace looks like in daily life, how it feels when it rests in the body, how it manifests in relationships, how it echoes in the mind. Without clarity, desire remains only a dream without form, and the dreamer remains asleep. Clarity of desire requires silence. It requires a turning inward, a willingness to stop and face the noise of the mind. In that noise, there are many borrowed desires, things taken from society, from family, from comparison, from the endless stream of images that surround the modern individual. One thinks, I want this, because it is seen everywhere, because it is praised by others, because it is portrayed as success. But when the inner silence comes, when all outer voices fade, one begins to see which desires are truly one's own and which are only illusions placed upon the mind. In silence, clarity grows like a lotus rising out of muddy water. The more one practices clarity, the more one sees that not all desires are worth holding. Some desires are distractions, fragments of attention that scatter energy in many directions. One day the mind wants one thing, the next day it wants another. Like a flame that flickers with every wind, no stable light is given. But when clarity of desire arises, the flame becomes still. Energy that was once scattered is gathered, and in that gathering transformation begins. A clear desire acts like a compass. It does not guarantee the path will be easy, but it ensures that every step is aligned with the chosen direction. There is also a power in knowing what not to desire. To see that some things, though glittering and attractive on the surface, bring only heaviness when possessed. The person without clarity chases endlessly, and even when the object is reached, dissatisfaction remains. But when clarity is present, one knows which desires are true nourishment and which are only temporary cravings. This distinction is the root of wisdom, the difference between walking in circles and walking a true path. Clarity of desire is also a discipline. It must be refined continually, for the mind is restless and easily distracted. It requires returning again and again to the question, what is it that I truly want? Not in the voice of society, not in the voice of comparison, but in the still voice that arises when all else is quiet. The process is not always comfortable. It requires facing contradictions within oneself. It requires admitting confusion. It requires patience. But slowly, like water carving a stone, clarity emerges. When desire becomes clear, even obstacles change their meaning. A vague desire sees an obstacle and feels defeated. But a clear desire sees the same obstacle and recognizes it as part of the path, as a test, as an opportunity to strengthen commitment. Clarity removes hesitation, and without hesitation, energy flows without interruption. The person who is clear in desire wastes no movement. Waste is no word, wastes no day, because everything is oriented toward a single direction. And yet, clarity of desire does not mean rigidity. It is not about forcing the world to bend to one's will. It is about aligning inner truth with outer action. When clarity is real, there is no struggle with the flow of life. Desire and life begin to move together, not against each other. Like a river carrying a boat, clarity ensures that energy is not wasted paddling in circles, but is instead carried forward by the natural current. The true strength of clarity is not that it guarantees fulfillment, but that it gives the individual a state of inner certainty. Even if the path is long, even if the destination is not yet reached, the mind is calm because it knows it is walking the right road. This calmness itself becomes nourishment, it becomes power, it becomes resilience in the face of difficulty. The person with clarity of desire is not impatient because each step already feels aligned with purpose. Without clarity, even success feels empty, but with clarity, even the journey itself is fulfilling. When people hear the word visualization, the mind often connects it to imagination, daydreaming, or fantasy. It is seen as the mind painting pictures of a desired future, perhaps success, love, or peace. Yet, the true art of visualization is not confined to the surface-level imagery of the mind. To visualize effectively is to go beyond mental pictures. It is to awaken the senses and call upon the depth of emotion. A lifeless picture in the mind carries little force, but when that picture is infused with genuine feeling, it transforms into a current of energy that begins to move reality itself. Feeling is the language of the body, and visualization without it is like speaking words in a tongue the body cannot understand. When you imagine yourself in a situation but feel nothing, the body remains unmoved, unchanged, unresponsive. But if you create the vision and pair it with the sensation of already being there, the weight of the success, the warmth of the joy, the calm of the peace, suddenly the body believes. The body does not distinguish between what is imagined and what is lived when emotion is attached to the image. In this way, visualization with feeling becomes not just a mental exercise, but a rehearsal of reality itself. This is why athletes close their eyes before competition, not merely to picture the movement of their bodies, but to feel the tension, the rhythm, the surge of energy as if the performance were already happening. Their muscles respond, their breathing changes, and the body learns through repetition even before the action begins. The same applies to all areas of life. If one wishes to become more confident, it is not enough to picture oneself speaking boldly. One must feel the resonance of the voice, the ease of posture, the steady heartbeat. Through this, the nervous system learns that the vision is not a distant dream, but a present possibility. Yet there is a challenge. The human mind often visualizes from a place of lack. A person imagines wealth because they feel poor, imagines love because they feel lonely, imagines health because they feel weak. When visualization is fueled by the energy of absence, the feeling that is attached is not empowerment but longing, not abundance but emptiness. The body listens, and it registers the absence more strongly than the image. This is why many people practice visualization but see little change. The image is one thing, but the emotional foundation behind it is another. To visualize effectively is to step beyond the emotion of lack and to cultivate the emotion of already having. Imagine the warmth of the sun on your skin, the comfort of safety, the gratitude of receiving something you once longed for. Even if the physical situation is not yet present, the body can generate the corresponding feeling. And once the body feels it, it begins to adjust posture, breathing behavior, and decision-making. This is where transformation begins. Visualization with feeling is not about escaping reality, but training the self to embody the state required for the vision to manifest. The universe does not respond to empty wishes, it responds to coherent energy. Coherence arises when thought and feeling move together as one. Consider water placed in a vessel. If stirred randomly, the ripples cancel each other out. But if the movement is steady and consistent, the ripples align, forming waves of greater strength. Thoughts without emotion are scattered ripples. Thoughts with feeling are aligned waves. When you practice this deliberately, you create not only an internal shift, but an external current that begins to move unseen aspects of life. People respond differently, opportunities align, and choices naturally begin to flow toward the direction of the vision. This does not mean that visualization with feeling is effortless. It requires discipline to sit in silence, to close the eyes, and to hold the vision long enough for the feeling to take root. The restless mind will wander, doubts will surface, the old emotions of fear or unworthiness will attempt to reclaim their place. But discipline is not about forcing the mind, it is about gently returning, again and again, to the chosen image and emotion. Over time, the repetition carves new pathways in the mind and body. Just as the hand learns an instrument or the legs learn a martial form, the heart learns how to sustain a vibration of belief and gratitude. It is also important to understand that visualization with feeling is not limited to personal ambition. One can visualize harmony, peace, compassion, not only for the self but for others. When the heart feels these states deeply, the body shifts into a mode of coherence that radiates outward. In this way, the practice becomes not only a tool of self-transformation, but of collective influence. The energy you embody begins to shape the space around you, and others feel it without words. This is the silent transmission of being that goes beyond instruction or persuasion. To visualize with feeling is, therefore, an act of creation. It is the deliberate cultivation of an inner state that teaches the body what the mind imagines. When repeated with patience, the line between vision and reality begins to blur, and the self steps naturally into alignment with the image once seen only behind closed eyes. It is not magic, but a natural law of the human system. The body learns what it practices, and when the practice is infused with emotion, the lesson sinks deeper than thought alone ever could. Control is often seen as the anchor of security, the thing that keeps us steady in the unpredictable waters of life. From an early age, the mind learns to cling to the illusion that everything can be managed, organized, and dictated by personal will. We hold tight to schedules, relationships, identities, expectations, and outcomes, believing that the tighter our grip, the safer we will be. Yet the paradox is that the more we try to control, the more fragile we become. Life does not bend entirely to human will, and the constant attempt to hold it still is like trying to catch flowing water in a clenched fist. What slips away is not failure. It is a reminder that control is not the ultimate power, but a barrier to understanding deeper truths. When the mind lives in control, it is never truly at rest. Each situation becomes a problem to solve, each person an unpredictable variable to manage. This leads to restlessness, tension, and exhaustion. Control is fueled by fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of losing what we think belongs to us, fear of facing the unknown. It creates a cycle in which the individual feels compelled to impose order on everything, yet life constantly resists. In this struggle, peace is lost and presence is sacrificed. The moment becomes a battlefield instead of a flow, and life is reduced to a series of attempts to maintain what can never be permanently maintained. To let go of control is not to fall into chaos. It is not to abandon responsibility or to drift aimlessly without direction. Rather, it is the cultivation of trust. Trust in the natural intelligence of life itself. The seasons change without needing our permission. The sun rises and sets, rivers carve their paths. Forests grow and regenerate, the wind moves freely across mountains. This natural unfolding shows that there is an order far greater than the one we try to impose. When control loosens, the mind begins to see this larger rhythm, and the individual learns to move in harmony with it instead of against it. Letting go of control also requires confronting the ego, for control is one of its strongest masks. The ego thrives on the illusion of being in charge, of directing every outcome and deciding every path. It whispers that if you do not control, you will lose, you will be left behind, or you will be powerless. But this is a deception. True power does not come from domination, it arises from clarity, presence, and the ability to respond rather than react. The one who lets go of control gains freedom from the constant tension of needing things to be a certain way. Instead of fear dictating every move, acceptance begins to shape one's choices. The mind that releases control discovers space within itself. This space is where creativity awakens, where solutions appear not from forcing but from clarity. In control, everything is rigid. In release, there is flexibility. Life is not meant to be perfectly predictable. It is meant to be engaged with. A flexible tree bends with the wind and survives the storm while the rigid one breaks. To let go is to become like the flexible tree, strong yet adaptable, firm yet unresisting. This is not weakness, it is resilience born of wisdom. The practice of releasing control can be as simple as observing one's breath. Breathing happens naturally. It does not require the command of the mind. When you try to control the breath, it becomes unnatural, forced, and uneasy. When you let it flow, it returns to its natural rhythm, calm, balanced, sustaining. This same principle applies to life. The attempt to control everything disrupts the flow, but surrendering to the natural rhythm restores balance. The breath teaches that life sustains itself without constant interference, and the same trust can be extended to the unfolding of one's path. Yet, letting go is not a single act but an ongoing practice. The mind, conditioned by years of habit, will always attempt to reclaim control. Thoughts will arise that say, "What if things go wrong? What if I lose everything? What if I am not enough?" To let go in such moments is to sit with the discomfort, to witness the fear without being enslaved by it. It is a discipline of awareness, a training of the inner self to recognize that holding on does not eliminate uncertainty, it only magnifies suffering. Each time one loosens the grip, a little more space is created inside, and a little more freedom is gained. Freedom comes not from mastering the external world, but from mastering the self. The world cannot be forced into submission, but the self can be trained to release its need to dominate. When control is abandoned, clarity deepens, and the mind begins to see life not as something to conquer, but as something to experience fully. Every challenge, every joy, every sorrow is part of the unfolding, and each one has its place. Control blinds us to this wholeness, but letting go reveals it. The one who lets go of control begins to live in alignment with a deeper intelligence. Decisions arise not from fear, but from insight. Relationships no longer feel like cages of expectation, but become spaces of genuine connection. Work becomes less about forcing results and more about expressing capacity. Even the body begins to release tension as the nervous system no longer carries the weight of constant vigilance. Energy that was once bound up in holding everything together is freed, and this energy becomes available for growth, creativity, and presence. Letting go of control is not about losing direction, but about walking with trust. It is the recognition that life is a dialogue, not a dictatorship. You are not here to command everything into being, but to participate in the flow with awareness and intention. Control tightens the fist, letting go opens the hand. And in that open hand, life places what is truly meant to be held, not because it was forced, but because it belongs in its time. When we observe nature, there is a rhythm that cannot be denied. The sun rises, the tides move, the seasons shift, and all of life follows a cycle of repetition. This repetition is not accidental, it is the foundation of stability. In the same way for the human being, consistency in practice is the foundation upon which true transformation is built. Many people believe that dramatic changes or sudden bursts of motivation are the key to growth. But what they overlook is that it is not the intensity of one effort, but the steadiness of repeated actions that creates long, lasting strength. To practice once is to experience a moment. To practice consistently is to reshape the self. Every repetition leaves a trace upon the body, upon the mind, and upon the spirit. With each return to the practice, the groove becomes deeper, the path becomes clearer, and the energy flows with greater ease. It is in this steady, continuous return that mastery is cultivated. A single act of discipline may inspire, but it is the continuation of that act, day after day, that transforms inspiration into embodiment. The challenge, however, is that the human mind often seeks novelty. It becomes restless, impatient, and distracted. It wants results quickly, and when results are not visible, it turns away to look for something new. This is why so many fail to achieve mastery. They abandon the path before it has revealed its power. Consistency demands patience. It demands the willingness to embrace repetition, even when the progress is not obvious. It asks for trust, that even if you cannot see the change in the moment, the change is quietly taking place. When a seed is planted, there is no visible growth above the soil for many days. Yet beneath the ground, roots are spreading, stabilizing, and preparing the plant for its upward movement. In the same way, when you engage in consistent practice, much of the transformation happens invisibly. The nervous system rewires itself, the mind adjusts to new patterns, and the spirit aligns with a deeper flow. If you abandon the practice too early, you never witness the fruit of what was quietly forming within. Consistency is not about perfection. It is not about never missing a day or never making mistakes. True consistency is about returning again and again, no matter how many times you fall. It is about showing up for yourself and for the path you have chosen. Even if the practice feels heavy, even if the mind resists, the act of returning carries its own power. Each return is a declaration that you are committed to growth beyond temporary moods or fleeting motivation. Through consistent practice, what once felt difficult becomes natural. The body adapts, the breath becomes steady, the mind becomes calmer. What was once effort becomes expression. This is the alchemy of practice. It transforms struggle into flow. But this transformation only arrives through persistence, through the willingness to embrace the same discipline again and again until it no longer feels like discipline, but simply life itself. In martial training, a single movement is repeated thousands of times. To the untrained eye, this appears monotonous, even unnecessary. But the repetition ingrains precision. It builds reflex. It unifies mind and body so that the movement arises without thought. What seems simple becomes profound, and what seems repetitive becomes liberating. Consistency strips away the excess and leaves only essence. The same principle applies to the practices of the mind and spirit. Meditation is not powerful because of a single deep experience. It is powerful because of daily stillness. Breathing practices do not transform because of one long session. They transform because the rhythm of breath becomes integrated into daily living. Reading one page does not create wisdom, but reading every day sharpens perception. Small acts, when performed consistently, accumulate into immense strength. The difficulty is that consistency requires humility. It is humble work to repeat the same steps, to practice when no one is watching, to continue when results are not immediate. The ego prefers shortcuts, dramatic breakthroughs, and recognition. But the path of consistency does not satisfy the ego. It nourishes the spirit. It teaches endurance, patience, and resilience. It dissolves the craving for instant results and replaces it with a quiet confidence that growth is inevitable when the practice continues. Over time, consistency becomes its own source of strength. It is no longer about the outcome, but about the process itself. The practice becomes a companion, a grounding force, and a reminder of what truly matters. Through consistency, discipline transforms into devotion. The act of returning again and again is not only training, it becomes a way of being. When storms arise, the consistent practitioner does not falter. Just as a tree with deep roots stands firm against the wind, the one who has practiced steadily stands firm against life's challenges. The strength is not sudden, but accumulated. It is not fragile, but deeply rooted. This is why consistency is not only about skill. It is about building a foundation for life itself. Consistency is the quiet power that shapes character, sharpens focus, and awakens potential. It does not demand brilliance, only persistence. It does not seek applause, only sincerity. And in its silence, it carries a strength greater than intensity alone could ever achieve,